Michael, Michael sir, if you can hear my voice.
नेट नहीं चल रहा था, मैंने पावर ऑफ किया।
Michael sir. हेलो सर, 2021 एंटर कर दीजिए जी। 202। हेलो अनिल सर, वीसी सर ने कनेक्ट कर लिया है। वीसी सर, हेलो। हेलो वीसी सर, मेरी आवाज आ रही है सर?
यस सर।
हेलो
हाँ भाई।
हेलो वीसी सर।
फुल लगाओ ना कानों में।
हेलो
ओके ओके ओके।
हेलो
नोट ये सर, बाकी वो जाने क्यों। हेलो गुप्ता सर, हाउ आर यू।
हाँ नमस्कार सर। नमस्कार सर। गुड टू सी यू।
नमस्कार। अरे सर नमस्कार नमस्कार।
गुड टू सी यू सर, बहुत दिनों के बाद आप।
हाँ अरे आप ही
जी
बहुत दिन बाद इस बार नजर आए हैं सर।
जी 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 बिल्कुल सर।
और हाउ इज योर बिंदल सर।
हाँ बिंदल सर ठीक है सर, आज मिनिस्ट्री गए हैं तो कोई मीटिंग में। जी
बहुत
जी।
बिजी रहते हैं वो। हाँ
हाँ सर, वो कोई मीटिंग में गए हैं तो अभी आज अब मुझे ही देखना है यहाँ पे, तो इसलिए मेरा भी थोड़ा सा वैसे ही हो रहा है। जी 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 जी।
अच्छा शुक्ला जी मोबाइल से आ गए। अरे क्या बात है शुक्ला जी, पहुंच गए शुक्ला जी। चलो अब देश आगे बढ़ाओ भाई फिर, और क्या। कौन है? Who is the anchor?
उससे मुश्किल से दो
स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ सर. गुड मॉर्निंग टू one and all, and I would request first to kindly mute your mics. And Anil sir, जी sir.
हेलो.
हेलो, अनिल सर, वीसी सर और शुक्ला सर, अगर अनुमति हो तो प्रोग्राम को आगे बढ़ाया जाए.
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल शुरू करिए, बिल्कुल शुरू करिए.
जी 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 जी, थैंक यू सर.
माइकल ज्वाइन हो गए क्या?
सर मैंने पूछा, अभी तक उनका रिवर्ट आया नहीं है, शायद अभी ज्वाइन कर नहीं पाया है वो.
हाँ,
मैं सर प्रोग्राम को स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ.
आप शुरू कर दीजिए. उनका कुछ
की अनुमति
टेक्निकल
से.
इशू है तो मैंने उनको बुलाया है
जी,
कि
जी.
मेरे कमरे से ज्वाइन कर लें.
जी सर. अब नहीं जाएगी. गुड मॉर्निंग टू वन एंड ऑल, एंड
ऑडियो तो बंद कर दे सर की ऑडियो नहीं सुन मुझे. ऑडियो नहीं सुनना मुझे सब करते थे करके मुझे आवाज नहीं सुननी है सर.
This is the program on resilient infrastructure and way forward, jointly organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, NIDM, and INVERTIS Bareilly, Uttar Pradesh. NIDM is a statutory body under the DM Act 2005, is the premier training institute with regard to imparting disaster management and disaster risk reduction education and training across various sectors in the country. NIDM lays emphasis on multi-stakeholder interdisciplinary approach for an efficient, proactive continuum of disaster management based on integrated multi-risk management concept aimed toward a disaster-free resilient the leading university which has grown full-fledged NAC accredited delightful destination for the students, not only in terms of acquiring academic progress but also for holistic development and studying in world-class learning environment. INVERTIS offers courses across a broad spectrum of disciplines with engineering, applied sciences, agriculture, humanities, biotechnology, computer application, education, journalism, management, pharmacy, law, and architecture. During ongoing COVID-19 times, due to the restriction in mobility, NIDM has been organizing various online education webinars as training programs as well on various aspects of COVID-19 as well as DM on DRR aspect in general as per the mandate, as per its mandate. Both NIDM and INVERTIS believe in the continuum of education which should never be stopped. Collaboration of NIDM and INVERTIS is now a year-long friendship between these two institutions. For collaborating on various DRR aspects, both organizations recently inked MOU as well. INVERTIS University is also the member of INDRR initiative by NIDM under Agenda Item 6, which is to develop a network of university to work on disaster-related issues under Honorable PM 10 point agenda for DRR. We have collaborated in organizing 9 fruitful webinars and 2 FDPs on various DRR aspects in the recent past, and are today again jointly organizing this third 3-day FDP cum training workshop on resilient infrastructure and way forward. I'm confident that this course will help all the faculties, academicians, research scholars, government officials, representatives of private firms, NGOs, etc., and especially students who are participating in today's program. To begin with our program, now I formally welcome the Honorable Chancellor Dr. Umesh Gautam sir in his absentia, Vice Chancellor Dr. YDS Arya sir, and Executive Director NIDM Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal sir in his absentia. In this 3-day FDP cum training workshop, as our esteemed patrons, and also welcome Dean Engineering Dr. R.K. Shukla sir, Professor Anil Kumar Gupta sir, Head ECDRM NIDM. It is only because of encouragement of you sir that we have been able to organize such collaborative events. I also welcome Professor Chandan Ghosh sir, Head Resilient Infrastructure Division NIDM, Dr. Sushma Guleria, Assistant Professor NIDM, Professor Girish Mishra sir, Assistant Dean, School of Science, OP Jindal University, Raigarh, Chhattisgarh. Shri Ashish K. Panda sir, Central Secretariat Service Officer, Government of India, and my own colleague, Engineer Ankit Kumar sir from Department of Civil Engineering, INVERTIS University, Miss Shruti Bansal, Research Associate, NIDM, as Miss Atisha Sood, Research Fellow, NIDM, and I also welcome Shri Michael Islari ji, Junior Consultant, as our esteemed speaker, and all dignitaries and delegates who have joined us today. Now, with the kind permission of our patron, we begin the inaugural session of this program. On this line, I would like to first invite Professor YDS RS, our Vice Chancellor, INVERTIS University, Bareilly. Sir is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, having worked with Sun Microsystem USA, Fujitsu Japan. VC sir joined this university of VC here as the Director Engineering, and today he is doing the coveted post of VC here. Sir is also in the distinguished expert panel of computer science of various universities. He is also a National Board of Accreditation expert of AICT. We are honored with your benign presence, sir, and I would request you to kindly deliver the inaugural remarks for the august audience here, please. Over to you, VC sir.
Thank you, Abdesh ji.
Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Yes. I think now I am unmuted, Abdesh.
जी.
You are hearing me? I am audible, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you. So, it is really a very good occasion for our students and others who have joined this webinar on disaster resilient infrastructure and way forward. As I see and Shri Abdesh Kumar ji introduced, there are so many speakers and they are really working in this area for long. So it will be really very beneficial. Actually, NIDM does anything, it is always for the safety and for the security of the people. This seminar is also going to be resilient infrastructure. Means it is not only that one way of being resilient. Whatever, unknown forces which are not in our favor want to really damage our infrastructure, we should be ready while constructing them. We should not make anything as it was made last time. No, we should always care what is going to happen in future. As you see, the buildings which are made near the seashore, they should be ready for those, those typhoons which come very normally there. And the other places which are on not the right zone of earthquake, they should be resilient to the earthquakes. Similarly, those places where fire is possible, like you are developing a structure for factory, then you have to take care for fire resistance. So whatever you make, you should be careful that what can happen to this in the unwanted circumstances. There is always a probability. Nothing happens without probability. In this world, this rule works. Nothing will happen which is not probable, but anything can happen which is probable. So you cannot just ignore anything because it has got a probability. If you are on the road, so you know that there can be accident if you do not follow the rules of the road, if you are not alert, or you are doing some kind of mischievousness. So same way, when you develop any infrastructure, you should really look for the future, look for the probability of various things, and accordingly you should develop your infrastructure, or you should develop any building or anything. So you will be least bothered, and you will save money, you will save lives of people, and you will save on everything. So I think it is very good lesson by NIDM that whatever we do, we should be using the latest technology techniques available to develop a thing so that it's more secure, more safe. So I think the experts will definitely deliberate on, maybe somebody will tell about fire, somebody about earthquake, somebody about wind. But overall, you will have a very good sound knowledge of these things which can disturb our structures, but there are always ways to minimize this. We never aim for 100%, safety, but we try to make it 100% as far as possible. So that if at all there is damage, then it should be minimum, and there should be way to recover it. So these kind of things are really very good, or that is the way a scientist or engineer should think, that we should do our best. We should not ignore any kind of possibility, and we should use the latest technologies available in the field. So I wish that our speakers will really should have prepared it well and will really benefit the listeners. And I wish that people are there with video on and interact also after the lecture is over, because just listening will never really make you more interested. You should bother that I'll ask this question, I'll ask this thing, why it is happening. Then you will enjoy your time. Otherwise, in online, you always have freedom to switch off your video, to switch off your audio, whether you are there or not. So that is not the right way of doing things. I request every participant to be serious and have a pledge that I will learn something from this webinar. Then only your switching on is valid, and you are really justifying, you are an honest person. If you are not doing this, then there is some kind of dishonesty on your part, and which will bother you sometime in your life. So be honest and try to take maximum out of this webinar. I once again thank you all the speakers who are going to deliver their lectures in the webinar and benefit the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable time. I know today you have a very busy schedule because URDC schedule at university. Thank you so much for your time, and you rightly point out the significance of resilient infrastructure. And you said, as you said, that nothing happened without probability. Yes, it's a right thing, but anything can happen that is probable. So it's a message that we should remember as a person who is engaged in disaster management. And yes, it is not possible that we stop everything 100%, but whatever extent maximum possible, we should go for that. And thank you so much, sir, for your message for the scientists and engineers in what direction they should look upon to manage these calamities and disaster, we can say. So I assure you, sir, participants are really very active. They keep posting on the chat box and interact with us. So as your message was, just listening is not enough. They are going to participate. It is going to be a participatory learning, 3-day learning program as well. Thank you so much for your insightful inaugural address, sir. Now I would like to request Professor, I think if I can see, Dean Engineering, Professor Arkur Shukla sir is there, if I can see. He is not, he's on travel, that's why it is not possible for him to connect today, but he's joined with us. Arkur Shukla sir, please, if you can hear my voice. Okay, let's move ahead. So I have the message of Dean sir for our 3-day program, that he was saying that disaster resilient infrastructure must be delivered at every section of the society, not limited to the some elite class or elite planning level. It should be delivered at all stages. So with this message, we will go to conduct this program for next 3 days. And meanwhile, when he got some time to connect with us, we will have sir. Now, I would like to invite Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, sir, Head ECDRAM Division, for his address. So, Professor Anil, sir, is formerly Head Director, Institute of Environment and Development Studies, Bundelkhand University, Jhansi. Since 2003, he joined NIDM in 2006. A disaster mitigation and crisis management professional, PhD. He did his PhD in 1995, postdoctorate CSIR NEERI 1996. He possesses interdisciplinary expertise with institutional development, administration, and management, coordinated and has coordinated several international national projects, over 100 publications, including 10 books and 45 chapters, guided PhD research. His special contributors were in preparation of national DM plan for including mitigation and response plan, national HR plan for DRM, perspective plan for NIDM, strengthening strategy on climate change, NAP on chemical disaster international cooperation with GIZ, UNEP, UNDP, ISET, US, UNU, EHS, UNESCO, CK, DN, IC, MOD, NORAD, World Bank, etc., and coordination with states, UT for TM capacity building training matters. Areas including risk vulnerability analysis, DMP, PDNS, CCA, DRR, housing safety, and local emergency preparedness, team planning, governance, etc. He also served as NDMC, DMI, NIDI, and SISCON in administrative technical capacities. He is coordinator of Technical Advisory Committee of NIDM, member of Governing Council and Academic Research Advisory of several institutions, and various high-level ministerial designation abroad. So, INVERTIS welcome you, sir. Thank you. Please enlighten us with your address, please, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Avdesh ji.
Professor Anil, sir.
Avdesh ji, am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
BMW.
And meanwhile, I also request the participant to keep their mics on off so that we can hear the eminent speaker. Professor Anil Gupta, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Avdesh. Professor Gaur, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University. His being and his address is always encouragement to all the faculty members and all of us and all the participants. I am really very happy to collaborate once again with the INVERTIS University for this academic endeavor. I would request all the participants and speakers who are not speaking at this point, kindly keep themselves muted. So there is no disturbance and we can enjoy the talks by other speakers. Thank you. Other speaker colleagues of this program. I see Professor Girish Mishra ji. Namaskar, Mishra Sahab. I think Professor Chandan Ghosh will also join shortly. Dr. Sushma Guleria, she will also join. Both are from NIDM and my good colleagues. Then other speakers who have been working with me in some other fronts. So really it is very interesting to see the kind of speakers Dr. Avdesh have invited in this program. And this program is of very important relevance at this juncture. As very recently we had seen the 6th assessment report of IPCC. And 6th assessment report has brought a fact that whatever we have been doing to address climate change, that is quite insignificant if we look from the point of view of disaster risk reduction. And disaster risk reduction or disaster management, although disasters have always been a part of our society, a part of our development. Disasters were there 50 years before also, 100 years before also. But gradually disasters are increasing not only in frequency, but also in intensity. The same disaster is now causing more people to get affected. Certainly there are anthropogenic and demographic dimensions. Now more people are located in urban areas where the infrastructure concentration is found. More people are living in surrounding areas of industries where the infrastructure concentration is there. And that is the reason we find that with an improvement in early warning system, with a great improvement in local level preparedness of dealing with disasters. For example, if we look at the preparedness to deal with the cyclone disasters, just 2 days back, we had a landfall of a cyclone. I think we have been able to reduce the loss of life to some good level. However, loss in terms of economic damage, loss in terms of infrastructure damage, loss in terms of damage to ecosystems and livelihood, I think that has increased And if we look at the same disaster, number of people are affected more, maybe dying, lesser number of people dying. So this is a new dimension, new shift has come. And this is also because of a reality that we have grown very fast in terms of developing our infrastructure. And still, our focus in the entire Asia Pacific is on infrastructure growth. Why it is on the infrastructure growth? Because the kind of parameters that we have in our sustainable development goal and the kind of improvement that we want to bring in the life of the people, infrastructure is must. Whether it is road connectivity, so it is transport, we need road infrastructure. Whether it is housing for all, we need buildings. Whether it is toilet facilities, sewerage system, electric supply, communication system, anything, even educational development, tourism development, everywhere infrastructure plays a very important role. But when infrastructure is developed in a very fast mode, sometimes the design and engineering parameters have been compromised, intentionally or non-intentionally. And when we witness the changing frequency and intensity of disasters or natural hazard events, these infrastructures were greatly affected. So, looking at the current scenario, also future scenario, the focus has to be on resilient infrastructure. Government of India has taken a leadership in this direction. Government of India has established a global organization that is called Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI. I'm very happy that at NIDM also and at the center that I am heading, we are doing a lot of initiatives in the area of resilient infrastructure. Also as a part of the city infrastructure, city resilience framework, industrial resilience framework, and also the climate resilience framework. Dr. Avdesh is also associated with us in doing some kind of a policy research. We are developing a framework for methodological interventions in promoting disaster resilient infrastructure. So I'm very happy that this program has been taken up today. But when we talk about resilient infrastructure, I think there are certain dimensions which are very important. Like interdependency of infrastructure or the functionality of infrastructure. Many times, or at least I would say that few years before, when we used to talk about infrastructure, the focus was only on structural dimensions. But later we realized that it is not only the hospital building that can serve the purpose. Having the hospital building intact is important, but along with that, the functionality of the hospital system is also important. So an infrastructure is not only a structure or an engineering structure, but infrastructure is a set that includes infrastructure or the structure, that includes the resources, that includes people, that includes the coordination mechanism, and that is very important. For example, in the cyclone Fani, some of the hospitals in Odisha got affected. But if we analyze the kind of situations that how hospital infrastructure got affected, so we find the water supply system was cut off or the electricity was cut off. It means an infrastructure functionality requires so many subset facilities also. Second thing, a hospital requires electricity. It means the functionality or the resilience of the health system will also depend on the resilience of the electric supply system. Similarly, the hospital, the people need to reach to the hospital or the doctor needs to reach to patients. It requires road connectivity. So it means transport infrastructure is also important. Even for the water supply, electricity is important. So there are a lot of interconnectedness in infrastructure resilience. Energy, I think, is a most cross-cutting dimension, and energy infrastructure resilience is important for almost all kind of infrastructure resilience. Recently, we have been working that how we think of an integrated resilience system for cities. And we are trying to analyze that what are the kind of interdependence between various sectors in cities. And also, many of the cities in their neighborhood or in their peripheral areas are having the industrial estates, or so many industries are located. So cities resilience cannot be thought by isolating from peri-urban areas or the industrial areas, or even the nearby rural areas. The labor market is in the labor force coming from the rural areas. The water supply coming from the rural areas. So rural urban connect is also important. So I think the message that I wanted to convey, that we will need to go one step more and looking at the infrastructure resilience. So we also take care that what are the other factors on which this infrastructure functionality depends on. And I think this is the time that we start looking at the different designing of the entire city systems, different design of our entire infrastructure systems. More energy efficient systems are now required. The kind of energy transformation we are going to see very shortly. The fossil fuel based energy system is going very shortly will be the history. We are trying to see and explore the alternative energy systems. So how in a new environment of energy, in a new environment of automation, where everything is driven by robotics or automation, how are we going to manage our infrastructure systems where direct intervention of human being will be minimal? So that is also important. Then beside that, how the social transformation, social changes are also going to be affected. How our occupational health settings in the working within these infrastructure is going to be affected, and how the future challenges of climate risk, future challenges of disaster risk are going to affect these infrastructure sustainability. And I think these are very important dimensions to look at a futuristic perspective. So the last message, that when we talk of infrastructure resilience, we should not limit our thought process only for the current period. We should think that what can happen 10 years down the line, what can happen 30 years down the line, what can happen 50 years down the line, or even beyond. I think that is very important, because you do not construct or erect any infrastructure for 10 years or 15 years. Even if you construct a building, you think that it will survive for 100 years or it will survive for 80 years, and your future generations will also live in that. So this is my last message, and my best wishes and congratulations to Dr. Avdesh and entire team, Ms. Michael Iswari from NIDM, and all the speakers. And I'm sure that the discussions are going to be wonderful. And I may be muted, or I may be keeping my video off, but certainly I'll be listening to the lectures, and I'll be taking the benefits of those. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Avdesh.
Thank you, sir. A really very insightful address in a true aspect. Sir, whenever I hear you, so I realize that how our future generations are going to get inspiration from the work you have did in your career. But now, today again, you have explained the situation as per the current scenario. Like IPCC 6 assessment report comes as a alarming bell for the world, and disaster resilient infrastructure is a very integral part of that if we wanted to stop that bell. Or EWS preparation, one side you explained that how with the early warning system has reduced the loss of life, but the impact, how it is increasing with each year. And infrastructure, when we go for the fast-paced infrastructure development, whether it's the development of the sewerage system, educational development, there are certain mistakes that are occurring in our infrastructure development plant right now. So for that, we have to go to incorporate this resilience in our infrastructure development. You discussed the Indian initiative CDRA, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, where India is playing a leadership role. So obviously responsible of the young buds who are connected with us today, they are also going to play a vital role in the future. As you say in your last measure, the infrastructure resilience should not be based on the current time only, but it should be futuristic. So the players or the stakeholder, they should also incorporate people who are responsible for the future infrastructure development or its maintenance or its other aspects. Sir, thank you for giving a insightful address on resilient energy resilient infrastructure, city resilience. You said that in city resilience, it's not possible without leaving the peri-urban and other regions behind. So we have to take all these things as a whole so that we can go for a holistic development and disaster resilient infrastructure can be promoted in the country and world. Thank you so much, sir, for your presence and your insightful address. Now, with permission of our dignitaries, I would like to formally begin the technical session here. And technical session's first talk will be delivered by Dr. Sushma Guleria, ma'am. I would like to invite her, ma'am. Dr. Sushma Guleria, is assistant professor with NIDM, and I would like to introduce ma'am with the August gathering. Ma'am is PhD in disaster management and B.Ed. She has been associated with this institute since 2006. Earlier, she worked on World Bank projects on school environment education in India with the Ministry of Environment and Forests, Government of India. She is also the recipient of World Bank's Young Researcher Grant Award for grant for disaster risk reduction for the year 2005-06. Currently looks after the Center for Climate Resilience and Environment and Center for Water and Land DRR. Ma'am, I would like to invite you. Please, over to you. Hello, Dr. Sushma Guleria, ma'am. Michael, sir, can you hear my voice?
Yes, Avdesh, I can hear you.
Kindly confirm ma'am is available here.
I don't think she is here. Just a minute. I'm sending a message. Please check.
Please, sir. Please. Meanwhile, ma'am, when ma'am is connecting, I would like to ask a question. And this question is especially to the student community. My question is, do you know the full form of CDRI? What is the full form of CDRI? I am typing it on the chat box as well. You can write its meaning if you know. CDRI. Okay, so I'm receiving a message from Sushma Guleria, ma'am. She is engaged right now. So for proceeding the session further, I would like to deliver my session. My session was scheduled as third session. Now I'm delivering it. Since ma'am is not available right now. Michael, sir? Okay, she will join at 11:40. Thank you. Thank you, Michael, sir. So, one second. So, I'm sharing my screen. Michael, sir, please let me know if it is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you, sir. One second. One second. There is a slight connectivity issue. I'm rectifying it. Yeah, so in line of disaster resilience, I am going to take a very important topic and important aspect because we at India, we know that it's a country of culture. Along with its culture, there are lots of infrastructure development, we can say. If we take the example of Delhi itself, so we can see three types of structure there: Sultanate, British architecture, Sultanate architecture, you can see there, and Mughal architectures are also there. But and these all structure, by the way, have some significant importance. And once lost, we cannot recover them. This is the fact. And now on with enhanced disaster pattern in all around the world, there is another dimension is emerging all over around the globe, that the loss to these monuments, these structures becoming an issue, and it's a prime concern for the disaster management domain. So I am sharing with all of you a presentation based on the same aspect. Michael, sir, is it visible on the full screen mode?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
It's
thank
visible,
you.
full screen mode. Thank you.
So it's a, this is a presentation based on disaster risk management for architecture and heritage. It's you can see how these structures are vulnerable and why it is vulnerable. So let's see a very basic definition of disasters. That disaster is something that is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society involving widespread human, material, economic, and environmental loss. And it includes the natural or human caused phenomena. We can say in simple words that natural or man-made disasters, though often caused by the nature, disaster can have human origin. So because these, when we study the disaster management, we broadly consider the disaster in the two categories, natural and human-based disaster. But as per the new trend, we are considering that though there is no natural disaster. But by the way, that is an issue that I will discuss in my later slide. So we can see natural disaster, geophysical disaster. For example, earthquake and landslide, these are considered the natural disaster. Hydrological disasters, avalanche and floods. Flood is a very prominent disaster in India. Climatological disasters like heat waves, cold waves, meteorological disaster like cyclones, storms, biological disasters, disease epidemic, insect plagues. Right now we have seen a pandemic, global pandemic, COVID-19. So these are known as the some domain of natural hazards and technological or man-made hazards. So environmental degradation, like depletion of resources, destruction of ecosystem, deforestation like activities, these result in the technological or man-made hazards. Pollution, soil, air, water, noise, emission from factories, bursting crackers, these are known as the some of the hazards that are created by the human population. Accident, we can say the bomb blast, terrorist attacks, etc. They are comes in the category of man-made hazard or technological hazards. Sorry. So these are some brief overview of disasters. Now we see, yes, disasters as this, we know the types as well, we know the names as well, but what we are doing for that. So for doing this, disasters are not the thing that are existing in our world in 100 or 200 years back, but it has a history began right from the human civilization. Or you can see this for abating these disasters in an effective way. There was a need observed by the global community, because disaster management is not the issue of one person, one state, one district, or you can say one country. So it needs a collaborative efforts of all. So that's why for promoting this global disaster resilience framework was built in by the global communities for building resilience of nations and communities. You can see 2005 and 15 was the duration when the Hague framework of action was launched, and there was commitment made on the global level to reduce for the disaster risk reduction. And after the 15-30, that is the ongoing Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction come into picture. And India is also the signatory of this Sendai and Hague both. So we are also have the commitment for risk reduction. And along with this global initiative in DRR domain, we have a very popular sustainable development goals into there are the 17 sustainable goals that you can see in this picture. And out of these 17 sustainable goals, 10 of these 17 are target related to the disaster risk reduction. And this is a global scenario. Now we move ahead. So what is the meaning of the heritage? Heritage is the country that have existed for a long time and that have the great importance for the country. एक देश के चिरकालिक की महत्वपूर्ण मानी गई परंपराएं, विशेषताएं, संस्कृति, धरोहर, विरासत और इमारतें उनमें बहुत मुख्य भूमिका निभाती हैं. तो ये हमारी हेरिटेज के अंदर एक आता है. तो अगर हम यहाँ पर देखें तो भारत ने जो ग्लोबल फ्रेमवर्क जिनकी हम बात कर रहे थे, लाइक ह्यूगो फ्रेमवर्क एंड Sendai framework of 2015-30, to accomplish those commitments at national level, India adopted Prime Minister's 10-point agenda for disaster risk management. This is an important agenda, also included in National Disaster Management Plan that was released in November 2019, and we can see these 10 points on which India is trying to find its way of disaster risk reduction. Here, these points are taken from NDMP 2019, Chapter 1, Preliminary 1.6. So here it is clearly mentioned that all development sectors must imbibe the principle of disaster risk management, work toward risk coverage for all, encourage greater involvement and leadership of women in disaster risk management, invest in disaster risk management mapping globally, leverage technology to enhance the efficiency of disaster risk management effort, develop a network of university to work on disaster risk issues to have social responsibilities too. And INVERTIS University, from where I am representing, it is the member of this university network initiated by National Institute of Disaster Management. 7th is about the utilizing the opportunities provided by social media and mobile technologies, etc. Build on local capacity and initiative is another 8th point, and ensure the opportunity to learn from disaster must not be wasted. Bring about a greater cohesion of international response to disaster. These are some 10-point agenda that is adopted in a country. All the risk reduction activities are included in this, and it was presented by Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself at Asian Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Management. So today in 2 slides, I presented one global framework, second national framework. Now coming on the topic. So here we can see heritage. Heritage, as I already explained, that these are the important monument structures, so we can rituals that exist in the country, and many countries have the recognition for that. You can see these images or these monuments, you can recognize this their respective countries. For example, this is the Taj Mahal at Agra, India. So it is, there is nothing written like India, Misr, etc. But we can recognize with this. So in a way, these are the identity of a nation as well. So heritage is an important aspect. For this, if we see the World Heritage Sites overview, so any of various areas or objects inscribed on the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO World Heritage List. So these sites are designated as having outstanding universal value under the Convention Concerning the Protection of World Cultural and Natural Heritage 1972. So they have the outstanding universal value, not the local value, not the national value, but the universal value. It's the property of everyone. It is a gift for the future generation, so that its conservation is very important. So if we go ahead, so this is the map, World Heritage Map. It is 2018-19 map, where you can see the World Heritage Site. I know the font is very small, so it is not possible to read this map, but you can find it on the internet very easily. So all 1092 World Heritage property and is illustrated with magnificent photos and explanatory caption here. So this is available. You should visit World Heritage Center's website for its detailed map. So it is available there. So this is a overview of this. Objective to show this map at this August platform is, you can see there is no boundary, no country we can define where this heritage properties not belong from. So it is it is not a national or a local issue, it's a global issue in a way. So heritage property resilience is important. Now, what is Indian status? So let's say if we go for the Indian status, India is known as the land of culture. So obviously there we can see three types of cultural sites here: culture, natural, and mixed. Cultural sites are those sites that include hundreds of the historic buildings and town sites, important archaeological sites, work from monumental sculpture and paintings, etc. So natural heritage site, we can say, restricted to those natural areas that have excellent ecological and evolutionary processes, unique natural phenomenon, habits of rare and endangered species. कुछ तो कल्चरली हमने बनाई हैं, जैसे कुतुब मीनार, ताजमहल, सांची का स्तूप, हैदराबाद के हमारे जो चार मीनार, इस तरीके की इनको हमने बनाया, कल्चरल हेरिटेज में आती हैं. लेकिन कुछ नेचुरल हेरिटेज भी हैं, सुंदरबन डेल्टा. So these are not made by human beings, but they are naturally existing. Overall, disaster when struck in these areas, so they hit both cultural and natural heritage both, and mix this contains the combination of natural and cultural heritage significance both. So in this way, India has 38 World Heritage sites, including 30 cultural properties, 7 natural property, and 1 mixed site. The latest one included is Jaipur city, Rajasthan. This may be updated right now because this is the data, and data may be updated at annual or you can say monthly basis. Now moving ahead. So what disaster management authority and what are the disaster management stakeholders are doing in this direction? So we have in history seen a lot of devastation, both by human beings and by natural disaster to these monuments. And since they are the property that has to be transferred to the future generation, that's why it is very important to keep this keep this point in mind. So National Disaster Management Guidelines were issued by National Disaster Management Authority, Government of India in September 2017. So cultural heritage sites and precincts were including this. So they have provided detailed guidelines. So cultural on this line, AMCDRR 2018, Asian Ministerial Conference for Disaster Risk Reduction. They also have a side event on in 2018 that was named Cultural Heritage and Disaster Risk Management. And during that course, a lots of media releases were made, like set heritage management example for other cities. So these are some work that exists in India. we have a specialized guideline for disaster risk reduction for these cultural properties or cultural heritage sites in India. So one thing is very clear, we have the well-defined, and we can say law and policies in India. Now, moving ahead, what are the impact of disaster on heritage properties? Okay, global frameworks are there. It's good. National frameworks are there for disaster risk reduction. Okay, and we have a great resources of heritage sites. It's also okay. But what are the impact of disaster on heritage properties? Maybe so it should be understood by the people who are the part of our program. So let's see some impact of disaster, how they are going to heritage, because we have to understand the problem, then we can go for the solution, and we can go also understand the significance of importance, why we need to find out this solution, why we need to imbibe the disaster management principle in conserving this heritage properties of sites. So heritage property can be exposed to one or more type of disaster. We know all know this. So climate change is one of the can also exposing heritage, natural properties, and ecological system. We all know that there is an example of Taj Mahal where there was the reports come that its white marble is fading and becoming yellow because of the impact of climate of the adverse environmental situations there because of certain chemicals. So this climate change also aggravate the situation. So climate change may also increase the impact of disasters on heritage, cultural property through its effect of significant underlying risk factors. Any risk in the soil moisture, for example, may affect the archaeological remains and historic buildings, thereby increasing their vulnerability to natural hazards such as earthquakes and floods. And a hazard could potentially change, degrade, or destroy the aesthetics or natural balance of the ecosystem of the heritage property. One thing I would like to quote here, ये कहा जाता है कि हेरिटेज प्रॉपर्टी बड़ी खंडहर होती है, तो पहले से ही जो चीज खंडहर है यानी बहुत पुराने समय में बनी है, एक लंबे समय से हमारे समाज में वो एग्जिस्ट कर रही है, तो उसकी सिचुएशन एक नई प्रॉपर्टी की तरह वैसे भी नहीं होगी. तो हम वहां पर नई प्रॉपर्टी को जिस तरीके से हम लोग सेफगार्ड करते हैं, वी कैन नॉट डिप्लॉय दोस मेथड्स देयर. It is very clear to everyone, because we need some special provisions, we need some special type of treatments there. People from the Archaeological Survey of India, they are actively engaged in conservation of these architectural sites. So especially so in the similar way, disaster risk reduction is also needs some special attention, special provision for these heritage properties. Now coming on the risk during the first 72 hours, ये फर्स्ट 72 आवर लॉ या 72 घंटे का जो नियम है, ये क्या है कि किसी भी आपदा के अगर आने के 72 घंटे के बाद वो साइट सबसे ज्यादा वल्नरेबल होती है. Usually cultural properties also have some things or artifacts that have the monetary value. There is a high chances of thefts or collapse of door, damaged fragments or movable objects from the property. Flooding may cause contamination through pollution and mold growth. So risk arising from the surrounding environment or habitat. Intensifying action by relief agencies or by volunteers, such as pulling down damaged structures of heritage value, of destroying the indigenous vegetation in the name of life safety. During the control, additional damage or heritage property may be caused by the water used for extinguishing the fire. So ये एक बड़ा अच्छा dimension है इसके अंदर, जो एक अच्छा मैं कह रहा हूँ, लेकिन है ये बुरा, क्योंकि जब कभी कोई आपदा आती, जैसे कि भूकंप आया या फिर कुछ इस तरह की सिमिलर सिचुएशन बनी या तूफान आया, उस सिचुएशन में होता क्या है, राहत और बचाव कार्यों के जो वॉलंटियर्स होते हैं और एजेंसीज होते हैं, वो अच्छा करना चाहते हैं. वहाँ लाइफ सेफ्टी पहली उनकी प्रायोरिटी होती है और होनी भी चाहिए, वहाँ पर लोगों की जान बचाने जाते हैं. लेकिन कहीं कहीं ऐसे इकोलॉजिकल हेरिटेज साइट्स होती हैं या इस तरीके के मैन मेड हेरिटेज साइट्स भी होते हैं, जो वहाँ पर बहुत बुरी तरह से एक तरह से प्रभावित हो जाते हैं, क्योंकि दे आर नॉट ट्रेन्ड फॉर कंजर्वेशन पर्पस. So due to the lack of awareness, these heritage properties got damaged during these relief operation as well. And जैसा मैंने बताया 72 घंटे के अंदर जो disasters होती हैं उसके अंदर हेरिटेज प्रॉपर्टीज को नुकसान पहुंचने की संभावना सबसे ज्यादा जाती है। इसका एक विजिबल एग्जांपल है कि जब दिल्ली के अंदर एक आंदोलन हुआ तो जो लाल किला है, लाल किला भी एक हेरिटेज साइट है, और इसके अंदर जब एक सिचुएशन बनी लॉ एंड ऑर्डर की, तो देयर आर द प्रॉपर्टी गॉट डैमेज एज वेल। सो intentionally or unintentionally, the damage is inevitable to the heritage property, and special need and care and the trained peoples and special plans are needed at the spot to conserve those heritage property and sites. Now, generally, we can do, say there are the damage to the property outstanding universal value during the emergency response activities in general, damage or pressure caused by the displaced peoples, particularly regarding camps of the displaced property, their associated infrastructure, waste and energy requirement, encroachment, pressure on development, illegal and controlled development. लोग डेवलपमेंट कर सकते हैं वहां पर, किसी तरीके का भी डेवलपमेंट अगर होता है तो हेरिटेज साइट को नुकसान पहुंच सकता है, और जिस चीज की आउटस्टैंडिंग यूनिवर्सल वैल्यू है वो चीज बिल्कुल खत्म हो सकती है। और लोगों के लिए, लोगों को क्या हो सकता है, इंजरी, मोर्टेलिटी, डिस्प्लेसमेंट ऑफ स्टाफ दैट कैन रिड्यूस कैपेसिटी फॉर सिक्योरिटी, मॉनिटरिंग एंड एनफोर्समेंट, लॉस ऑफ लाइवलीहुड सोर्सेज लिंक टू द प्रॉपर्टी। यहाँ पर अगर कोई हेरिटेज स्ट्रक्चर खत्म होता है तो एक वर्स्ट सिचुएशन केस को अगर हम देते हैं कि पेरिस का एफिल टावर है, अगर पेरिस का एफिल टावर ना रहे तो पेरिस का एक बहुत बड़ा अट्रैक्शन खत्म हो जाएगा, एंड इट ऑल्सो रिजल्ट इन द लॉस ऑफ लाइवलीहुड sources linked to that property. A number of people got their livelihood from these heritage structure. आप ताजमहल घूमने जाएंगे, अभी कभी महरौली दिल्ली घूमने जाएंगे, आप किसी भी जगह पर जब घूमने जाएंगे तो इन प्रॉपर्टीज के साथ बहुत सारे लोगों की रोजी रोटी जुड़ी होती है। अगर कोई डैमेज इनको होता है तो वहां पर भी खतरा होता है। कल्चरल साइट्स की बात है, लूटिंग एंड थेफ्ट्स आर द कॉमन प्रॉब्लम, enhanced rate of deterioration of damaged wood or stone, risk of loss of authenticity and falsification through reconstruction. अब रिकंस्ट्रक्शन की वजह से जरूरी नहीं है कि जो चीज बनी हो उसी को दोबारा बनाया जा सके, तो ये ऑथेंटिसिटी एंड फॉल्सिफिकेशन भी हो जाता है, क्योंकि कहते हैं ना कि ओरिजिनल चीज ओरिजिनल ही होती है। अगर हम ताजमहल में एक चीज का फॉल्सिफिकेशन करें तो वो तुरंत वहां पर एक अलग सा दिखने लगेगा। तो दिस रिकंस्ट्रक्शन प्रोसेस आर आल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट। सो water damage from firefighting etc, this may be heritage property that are vulnerable to the water damage. So firefighting, we can see this can also damage this cultural site. Now again, for natural sites and some cultural landscape and for existing management system, we are discussing 3 or 2 points. So for natural site and some that have the some cultural landscape, ऐसी natural site तो वहाँ पर outstanding universal value होती है, integrated degraded throughout the habitat loss and poaching, pollution from waterborne debris and contaminated water course, encroachment. और जैसे हम कहते हैं कि अगर हमारे यहाँ पर जो एक कहते हैं कि कश्मीर को धरती का स्वर्ग कहा जाता है, तो कश्मीर की एक कह सकते हैं नेचुरल साइट, एक हेरिटेज उसको मान सकते हैं, वहाँ बहुत अच्छे अच्छे लैंडस्केप हैं। सुंदरबन डेल्टा पे बहुत अच्छे अच्छे लैंडस्केप है। तो ड्यू टू एनी एक्टिविटी, ड्यू टू द टेररिज्म, ड्यू टू सम नेचुरल डिजास्टर और मैनमेड इंटरवेंशन, अगर ये एक बार खत्म हो गए तो देयर इज नो चांस टू रिवाइव देम बैक एंड रिकंस्ट्रक्ट देम बैक. सो दिस इज highly important that this site should be safeguarded from the disaster. So pollution from waterborne debris, contaminated water courses, जैसे फ्लैश फ्लड केदारनाथ डिजास्टर 2013 जब हुई तो बहुत ज्यादा बड़े पैमाने पर पानी और डेब्रिस आता है ऐसे डिजास्टर के दौरान, तो वहां पर डैमेज होने से भी वहां पर वाटरबोर्न डेब्रिस और कंटामिनेटेड वाटर कोर्सेज से भी नुकसान पहुंच सकते हैं. इंक्रोचमेंट और एग्जिस्टिंग मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम के लिए हम साइट लेवल ऑफिस बिल्डिंग्स एंड इक्विपमेंट may be damaged, site level staff may be affected, जिनके ऊपर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है वो भी बिल्डिंग्स डैमेज हो गई तो फिर उनको एकदम केयर पोजीशन में पहुंच जाती है बिल्डिंग. सो देयर आर हाई चांसेस ऑफ लूटिंग एंड थेफ्ट फ्रॉम दिस आर्टिफैक्ट फ्रॉम दोस बिल्डिंग एंड डैमेज टू द these heritage sites is highly possible. Now information needed to identify risk to heritage properties. How to identify the risk to heritage property? So there are certain factors and processes that may result in the damage or deterioration. We can go for certain processes like the assessment of probability of occurrence of each hazard. These are some basic of all disaster management process that we need to assessment of probability should be there so that we can identify what are the chances of occurrence of each hazard. Geographical information of the location of the property, its boundary, its buffer zone, its immediate surrounding. We need to gather all this information in advance regarding the heritage site. Geological, hydrological, meteorological information on the nature of the climate, soil, fault lines, water table, surface water such as river, etc. You know that Taj Mahal is the best example of the heritage site that have the river in the vicinity of that site. So we need to understand this hydrological, and meteorological aspect of this, the site location of the site where it is existed right now. Thematic map of the area and regions in which the property is located, such as hazard vulnerability map. I must say, I would like to add a word essential here, because it is very important. If we have the thematic map of the area, it will help a lot during the operations when we go for the disaster rescue or response operation or relief operation in those areas. Information on the history on the area where the heritage site is there. So information on the history of different disaster affecting the area and property itself, obtained about the historical report from specific agency dealing with the different types of disaster. So it is very important to know the history of disaster. एरिया में जो इफेक्ट पड़ता है किसी डिजास्टर से वो भी पता होना चाहिए, साथ में प्रॉपर्टी पर भी कभी पहले जब जैसे अगर आप ताजमहल की मैं बार बार बात कर रहा हूँ, वहां पर देखें तो वर्ल्ड वार के टाइम पे ऐसा कहा जाता था, उसके ऊपर शीट्स डाल दी गई थी सो दैट दे कैन बी सेव्ड विद द एयर बॉम्बिंग, और and different wars due to different durations, there are the methods and practices adopted at that site to save the one of the wonder of the world from these type of threats. Now, what is the meaning of the risk reduction? You can see this basic diagram, as our Vice Chancellor sir also says that 100% is not possible to stop any risk, but so it may, but at most level we can low it as much as possible. So high, medium, low. So we have to keep this needle as down as much possible with the with proper planning and proper readiness. So inventories and the current status of the existing management system needs to be prepared so that we can plan. So shelter, evacuation, rescue operations there. Hazard specific equipment must be evaluated at the time of when the flood, fires, landslides, pollution events, disease epidemic, outbreak. So local traditional knowledge system, they work a lot. Nature-based solution, or we can say local and traditional knowledge did a lot of work because they have the expertise in their own. Whether this is not published in any technical paper or any publication, but they know that how to survive with a particular disaster. So the excellent way to safeguard this World Heritage Site, or you can say involve in any disaster management plan, local and traditional knowledge works a lot. So complete and essentially accessible directory of agency that will be taken. एक एग्जांपल मैं यहाँ पर बोलना चाहूंगा, तो यहाँ पर जो अंडमान निकोबार के अंदर कई सारी जनजातियां हैं, तो इसमें जब सुनामी का एक आउटब्रेक हुआ था तो ऐसा लगा था कि वो सारी वैनिश हो जाएंगी, और ये कहा गया था मोर देन ए नेचुरल डिजास्टर इट इज ए सोशल डिजास्टर, यानी कि प्राकृतिक आपदा से ज्यादा यह एक सामाजिक आपदा है जिसने पूरे सिविलाइजेशन को खत्म कर दिया वहां। लेकिन ऐसा सरप्राइजिंगली नहीं हुआ, और ऐसा इसलिए नहीं हुआ क्योंकि वहां की जो कम्युनिटी थी उनके पास अपनी ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज थी, ट्रेडिशनल विजडम थी, जिसकी वजह से वो लोग बचा पाए अपने आप को। सो दिस शुड बी इनकरेज्ड इन ऑल द लेवल्स। इट वाज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ लोकल एंड ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज एप्लीकेशन एंड स्कोप। और इसको करने के हेरिटेज साइट प्रॉपर्टीज को कैसे बचाया गया, देयर आर सर्टेन केस स्टडीज लाइक मिटिगेशन थ्रू फ्लड कंट्रोल, एनवायरमेंटल रिजनरेशन. सो इट इज एग्जांपल फ्रॉम द इटली, and it launched an action plan to save the Venice by developing the approving spatial laws for the cities, making sizable sum of resources available, setting up a special procedure instrument for the historic cities and its lagoon. Leonardo da Vinci का सिटी कहा जाता है वेनिस को, एंड यहाँ पर डिजास्टर फ्लडिंग जो 4 नवंबर 1966 को आई थी उसका एक सीन दिखाई पड़ रहा है। तो बाद में इन्होंने मिटिगेशन बड़ा एक्सीलेंटली यहाँ पर किया। So second example we can say, so integrating heritage in urban and regional planning. You can see the flooded monument due to the incessant heavy rainfall in 1995. It is a scene from the 1995, and it is the scene from the Thailand, Ayutthaya in Thailand. So it is a historic city, have a great heritage importance. So several projects were formulated at regional level in that country, means in Thailand, including construction of dams and reservoir, grass plantation along the banks of major rivers, flood water rejection project, dredging and wastewater, and removal of the water beds, etc. This was another example. Another example we can say glacial lake outburst flood, GLOF 1977. GLOF को बार बार अभी सुना गया चमोली इंसिडेंट्स के दौरान भी, तो ग्लेशियर लेक आउटबर्स्ट फ्लो है, ग्लेशियर एक फटा है, ये दिखाई पड़ रहा है, और ये सीन है सागर माथा नेशनल पार्क इन नेपाल। जो इंडिया के लोग हैं जो जानते हैं, इंडिया के नहीं नेपाल के लोग अगर जुड़े हैं इसमें, वो दे नो वेरी वेल दैट कि जो माउंट एवरेस्ट है उसका एक नाम सागर माथा नेपाल में प्रचलित है। सो दिस द सीन फ्रॉम देयर। So mitigation through monitoring and early warning system, glacial lake outburst flow in Sagarmatha National Park scene is there. And we can see here example of mitigation in face of the potential El Nino event and climate change, Chan Chan Archaeological Zone, Peru. It's another heritage site. And the people from the climate or you can say environmental background, they understand the meaning of El Nino and La Nina. So it's a potential Nino event. It's a scene from the vast and fragile site of Chan Chan Archaeological Zone, Peru, where the heritage properties were conserved with the help of the various DRR measures. Now, example of repair and restaurant of damaged cultural properties. Let us see an example from Kobe, Japan, following the 1993 earthquake. But 1 second, I would like to ask Michael Isalari, sir. Michael, sir. Is ma'am is connected with us?
Yes, she is connected.
Okay, okay. Thank you for informing. So it is an example from the of repair and restoration of damaged cultural properties. Example from Kobe, Japan, 1993 earthquake. So here accurate identification of state of damage, appropriate retrofitting measures for improving seismic resistance and retaining heritage values. So they have done this. Special committee constituted to examine the repair policy for cultural property. थोड़ा अगर मैं हिंदी में बोलूं तो यहाँ पर जब भूकंप आया तो बड़े आप देख सकते हैं इस ब्रिज इस स्ट्रक्चर का हाल, ये पूरी तरह फ्लाईओवर उलट चुका है यहाँ पर किस तरीके से, बिल्कुल. So this you can say this was the extent of damage at the Kobe, Japan in 1993. So they constituted a committee members comprised of architectural historian, specialist in structural studies and repair engineers. Usually during the earthquake assessment, the team was formed of the structural engineers from the civil engineering domain. But here you can see the architectural historian and specialists were there at the structural studies and repair engineers. So committee determined the approaches for retrofitting following the priority orders. Additions, they have additions using traditional techniques and traditional materials. As I say that traditional method are the excellent way, traditional wisdom is the excellent wisdom. So they imbibe the reinforcement of roof with the palm tree roof there. Then after this earthquake, additions using traditional techniques and those derived from the them traditional and modern material, they have make the fusion of that traditional and modern wisdom. So carbon fiber sheets were developed and the reinforcement done with the help of that material. So additional using modern techniques and modern materials, inserting an iron frame in the structure for load sharing. So replacement, these are actually the domain from the civil engineering core domain. So since the many people are there from the non-civil engineering background, so let's understand it in a simple manner. It's that's like the reinforcement done in the building. So replacement using modern technique and modern materials through base isolation of the structure. It is also a technique used for the earthquake retrofitting. Now, this was the example from the Kobe, Japan. So they have adopted and included the historian and architects in this structural studies and repair initiatives. Now, reason we should preserve our heritage. So there are some visible reasons, because when we got bored, so we our advice to go to some temple, mosque, church, or some place that have the aesthetically beautiful, to some tourist site. So architecture beauty is good for our brain. It is a established concept. So a relatively new area of the neuroscience known as the neuroaesthetics says that the beauty in art and design makes us happy. Scientists can track brain activity when people respond to the design and beauty. So this is a scientific thing that architecture beauty is the requisite of human civilization. So historic buildings are physical links to our past. It's not just about saving bricks, but about saving the layers and layers of information about our lives and those of our ancestors. Without that, we have erased the stories of our past, as we know people that came before us never existed. हम कोई मंदिर देखते हैं जब साउथ का, तो बहुत खुश होते हैं कि हमारे पूर्वजों ने इसको बनाया. हम कोई बहुत बड़ी मस्जिद जब देखते हैं तो हम बड़े खुश होते हैं कि ये इतना एक्सीलेंट एग्जाम्पल है. ताजमहल को जब 7 आश्चर्य में गिना जाता है तब हम बहुत खुश होते हैं एक देश के रूप में. इकोलॉजिकल साइट्स को देखते हैं, तो ये हमें हमारे पूर्वजों से भी जोड़ता है, केवल ईंट पत्थरों को कंजर्व करने की बात नहीं है। तो हिस्टोरिकली सिग्निफिकेंट बिल्डिंग्स कंट्रीब्यूट टुवर्ड्स सिटीज कल्चर एंड इकोनॉमिक वेलबींग। आगरा के शहर के अंदर आज बहुत सारे लोगों का जो रोजगार है वो ताजमहल से जुड़ा हुआ है। इकोनॉमिक वेलबींग एंड सिटीज कल्चर इज आल्सो associated with that. Heritage preservation is more labor intensive, which means more job. लोग लगते हैं तो jobs create होती हैं। They generally either places of great natural importance or reminiscence of major turning points achievement in human history. जैसे हमें ये पता चलता है कि बुलंद दरवाजा क्यों बनवाया गया था, या ये इस मंदिर का निर्माण क्यों हुआ था, ये इस तरीके से पेरिस को क्यों, तो दिस इज ऑल्सो द टर्निंग पॉइंट ऑफ अचीवमेंट इन ह्यूमन हिस्ट्री, सो वी कैन नॉट गेट देम डिस्ट्रॉय। द सिंबल ऑफ प्राइड ऑफ ए नेशन, एक किसी देश की शान भी माने जाते हैं, जैसे चीन है, चाइना की दीवार उसकी शान मानी जाती है। तो इस तरीके से यहाँ पर इस तरीके से एक वैल्यू भी जोड़ता है। द प्राइड ऑफ नेशन इज ऑल्सो एसोसिएटेड विद दैट। नाउ स्टैच्यू ऑफ लिबर्टी अगर टूटेगा तो वो एक देश की शान में भी एक वो होगी कि नुकसान हुआ। Traditional knowledge and system to protect the heritage property. We have the traditional knowledge system earthquake resistant construction in Kashmir and Gujarat. Traditional construction survived for devastating earthquake 2005-2001. जो 2005 और 2008 के जो भूकंप थे, इसके अंदर ट्रेडिशनल कंस्ट्रक्शन ने बहुत अच्छा सा एक हमें बताया कि एक सेट एग्जांपल है। इन कश्मीर earthquake traditional structure built using local building techniques of TOQ and Taji Devari. So these are the techniques that worked well during the earthquake that was a permanent disaster in the Indian Himalaya region that we known as IHR. Traditional dwellings of the earthquake-prone Kutch region in Gujarat and Bunga, circular shape, good at resisting lateral earthquake forces, have also withstand the earthquake. So they were also proved great. So it means that they have techniques that have a great gravity in adopting this. So Wattle and daub construction in Gujarat, where wood is used for reinforcement for the wall, have proved to be the very effective. So at last, the reason we should preserve the heritage. Let's reducing disasters in the urban areas. I am summing up my presentation because we have the Sushma Gularia ma'am with her lecture. So vulnerability of historic cities, key principle of approaches for urban disaster risk management, various measures for pre-disaster risk reduction, mitigation, emergency response, and post-disaster recovery. It is historic urban areas, recent international initiative related to the urban disaster ring. So these are some methods, or you can see we need to explore where we want to reduce the disaster risk in the urban historic area. We need to access the vulnerability of historic area on an urgent basis. Key principles and approaches for urban disaster risk management needs to be deployed there. Whereas measure for prehistoric disaster risk reduction mitigation is important. Emergency response and post-disaster recovery in historic urban areas need to be implemented. Recent international initiative related to the urban disaster risk need to be imbibed with the principle of countries like in India as well. So for that, we have the CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. That is the Indian initiative about which Professor Anil Gupta sir was talking about, and I have asked a very specific question during the program that what is the meaning of CDRI. So this is the full form of the CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. 24 countries are the member of this. We work on the thematic area where the policy estimation, surveillance capacity development is the part. Many organizations, because no plan can work without the funding, without the monetary support. So it has a great monetary support as well. Asian Development Bank, World Bank Group, UNDP, UNDRR, ARISE, Coalition for Climate Resilient Infrastructure, etc. European Union is also supporting this. Now, heritage conservation, the broad TRR coverage, and at last, because time is short now, so let's see this image. So this is a image from the Afghanistan. It is known the larger Bamiyan Buddha in its niche before and after demolition by the Taliban in March 2001. Now the world is watching the Taliban or you can say Afghanistan crisis again. But this is the picture from the past where you can see the sculptures of the Buddha. It was a great heritage property, World Heritage property. So Taliban, it was damaged in the 2nd to 4th century in Gandharan sculpture of the Buddha from the Hada monastery complex in southeast Afghanistan. The Gandharan period saw the earliest figural depiction of the Buddha. So it was the photograph taken by Gil Stein, courtesy of the National Museum of Afghanistan. Now the situation is this. In the first picture, you can see the earlier. And second picture, you can see after the demolition. So this is the thing that we are talking about. We are just not limited toward the natural disaster, natural threat, but the human, or you can say the terrorist-based threats are also also there to the heritage and cultural properties. So at last, I would like to say that no legacy is so rich as heritage. You may earn money again and again, you can lose it and again regain it again. But once the heritage lost, then we cannot recover it once again. So with these words, I would like to sum up my presentation. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Thank you. Michael Ishari, sir.
Yes, thank you so much, Udesh Kumarji, for delivering a detailed and comprehensive presentation. Thank you so much once again. Now you may proceed with the next speaker.
Sure. At our next technical presentation, I would like to request Dr. Sushma Guleria, ma'am, Assistant Professor, National Institute of Disaster Management, to kindly present her views on institutional framework for disaster management in India. Before ma'am proceed with her lecture, I would like to introduce ma'am with the participant. So ma'am is the PhD in disaster management, and B.Ed, she has been associated with this institute since 2006. Earlier, she worked on World Bank project on school environment education in India with the Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India. She is also the recipient of World Bank Young Researcher Grant Award for disaster risk reduction for the year 2005 to 6. Currently looks after the Center of Climate Resilience and Environment and Center for Water and Land DRR. It's an honor for the INVERTIS University to have ma'am with us. Ma'am, Dr. Sushma Guleria, ma'am, I would request you to please proceed with your session. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Avdesh. Thank you, Michael, for having me today here. Very good afternoon, almost good afternoon to all the participants who have joined us. Can I have the screen sharing rights, please?
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Yeah.
And I would also request you to please, if possible, to turn on your camera so that we can have.
मेरा system ऐसी जगह पे ना वो it doesn't.
Okay.
There's no light actually. That's the issue.
No issue, ma'am. No issue. I have provided the sharing rights, ma'am. You can share.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So Avdesh has actually, taken us on a very beautiful ride for especially one sensitive area, which is our heritage sites, right?
Right, ma'am.
मुझे बताओ ये ठीक दिख रहा है presentation, Avdesh?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, it's going great. It's going great.
My association, with this particular aspect where you are talking about infrastructure safety is the comparison I saw of Nepal. So, I'm sure, I think Avdesh had mentioned in between that we have friends from Nepal today who have joined us. So they would be in a better, state to even understand. So prior to 2015 Nepal earthquake, April 25th, Nepal has such rich cultural heritage. And now if you visit Nepal, you can see the status of some of the damages and also to an extent the loss of that cultural valuation. And, the food for thought here is it's so difficult to give a monetary valuation, equivalent valuation to the loss of such valuable, our manuscripts or our souvenirs that we have, right?
Well
now
said,
that's one with infrastructure, our cultural valuation, and also at the same time, though not directly linked, but also when we talk in terms of the environmental conservation, the biodiversity zones. So that's another thing for the participants. It's equally difficult to give a valuation, to do an assessment of how much does the loss of one sparrow in an urban area would mean to the ecosystem, to the various biodiversity zones that it belongs to. So that's something with which we should be moving ahead. Now, my presentation.
And one thing I would like to say, since you talk about the Nepal students. So at INVERTIS City, there are a number of students are from Nepal. So
I see. Okay.
So they are also hearing you, ma'am.
Yeah, so we visited like prior to the earthquake, and we were there as a team. I think the SAARC country, we had hosted a program, and again in August 2015, that same year. And at that time, it was still in a mess. You know, a lot of constructions were still falling, and I still remember the city. They had placed huge thick logs, and they were trying to just safeguard as much of those valuable monuments. Parallelly, the response work was still going on at that time. And for Nepal earthquake, the learning was that after the aftershocks, the amount of impact aftershocks create from one event. So it was not just the earthquake alone as a single event, but it was the 250 plus aftershocks that Nepal witnessed over the next 2, 3, 4 months that were equally destructive. You know, so having so many, almost 260, 70, 80 aftershocks over a duration of 2, 3 months. So imagine the status of the infrastructure, the still half, standing buildings, or, half fallen, or half those constructions, how it's so difficult for these constructions to survive. And that is what makes it imperative that we are talking in terms of building resilient infrastructures. Right now, this presentation ideally is just an overview, and it should have been prior to what Avdesh had presented. Nonetheless, we'll just go through why at the first place a need was felt, and currently how we are looking at the whole idea of infrastructure safety, apart from the other vulnerability aspects, which are social vulnerability, which is equally important. And the pandemics had definitely brought it to the front line, how different vulnerabilities, the need for safeguarding these vulnerabilities have evolved. All right, so just a brief background quickly. Because they didn't have a proper formalized institutionalized policy on disaster management, our approach, or the thought which generally the public had, was that it's something, especially the natural hazards, the thought was that it is the anger of God. And there are still such beliefs which are present. It is still not that we have taken a complete scientific approach, and we respect the religious faiths which are ingrained in different communities. One example is of the Uttarakhand 2013 flood deluge. So there was a belief that there was a goddess temple up in the hills in one place, which was being shifted, or which was shifted prior to what happened in 2013, because there was some developmental activity to be carried out in that area. And the locals believed that it was the wrath of that goddess, because you shifted her from her original place, and that's the reason such a big event or a tragedy occurred. So we equally respect the faith, and we also look at things from a scientific perspective, which is the need also. And how we look at it from a policy advocacy mode. So it calls in for a mutual, a unison of all these ideas and thoughts, because in a lot of times when you talk about local level initiatives for managing and conserving your resources, we rely a lot on the local faith system. So that's also why you should let such beliefs be restrained, not let go of those beliefs, and make them equally a part of such thoughts. So this was the approach and idea. Of course, most of the efforts were centered around providing relief, right? Most people are aware of it. Because India had a very big history of famines and droughts. It was largely droughts, जो हम हिंदी में सूखा और अकाल बोलते हैं. So these two were considered as only the disasters, and that was the reason why the Ministry of Agriculture was the sole ministry that looked after the subject of disaster management. And of course, a response was heavily dependent upon armed or paramilitary forces. Now, you had a sequence of multiple events. Some of them were the major events, and some were minor. A lot of people quote the example of Odisha super cyclone of 1999, and they compare it to what happened during cyclone filing of 2013, you know, how the vulnerabilities in terms of constructions, in terms of new development, in terms of even the social fabric has multiplied from 99 to 2013. But how as a country, India evolved or what we call it as a success to our disaster management initiative by safeguarding or minimizing the life loss as compared to 99 in 2013. So that's one aspect to which we always take a credit, right? We say that the life loss was minimized from some 10,000 plus in 99 to some less than 50 in 2013. It is equally important to also understand the role that safe shelter sites played for for these two events. So while in 1999, Odisha as a state had just less than 20 safe cyclone shelters, by the time it was 2013, the state had really worked hard and developed some 900 plus safe shelter, multi-purpose safe shelter sites. So that is also an area which needs to be acknowledged for the efficient management of how filing is considered as a better managed event. And then subsequently, you had other multiple events like Cyclone Fani was very destructive. And also not to forget that it was a pre-monsoon event, which India generally sees less of pre-monsoon intense cyclones. So what we generally in India experience are post-monsoon intense cyclones. But we are seeing a rise in that. And parallelly, we are also seeing a rise in cyclones in the West Coast. So managing 12 lakh plus evacuation of population in Cyclone Fani in 2018 is also a commendable step, but it wouldn't have been possible if you do not acknowledge the establishment of safe shelter sites. So that's how we need to also embark on the journey of better construction practices. So with a background of so many multiple events of severe nature and then a lot of other minor events, the gaps that were identified were that as a nation we did not have good assessments done. Now these assessments range from not just understanding your hazards, but your various kinds of vulnerabilities and then risk mapping. We have definitely grown from risk mapping to risk informed peoples, right? So that's how we are progressing. But that is one part. We earlier had our early warning systems were not just inadequate in terms of the number of established such warning sites, but also in terms of the technological advancements, we as a country were still not up to the mark. And that is the reason our warnings used to go a little haywire. So despite that, there used to be warnings given of a certain nature, it didn't hold true a lot of times, which led to establishment of an unfaith in the systems, right? So people did not pay attention to these warnings because a lot of times these warnings were not holding true. So that kind of sets a mistrust between the communities and the administration. So that was also a gap, which as a nation, again, we have achieved tremendous growth. The prediction of cyclones and floods since 2011, 12, 13 onwards have been acknowledged and appreciated for IMD, even considering that they have been near accurate, even as compared to the world meteorological warnings. So that's the way we have done some kind of a growth, right? Of course, we do have challenges in terms of disseminating these warnings to the last mile connectivity, or even in terms of the last mile services, there are still some gaps, which as a disaster management field or fraternity, a lot of people are working on it, right? But this is the background on which our efforts for building the Disaster Management Act were established. Communities were not very well made aware, so there was very less of awareness. And it's a very basic term it's a very basic saying that we say, ignorance plays a lot of role. So if people are ignorant about the importance of knowing what kind of hazards they are prone to, or how vulnerable their terrains is making their livelihoods or income generating sources are getting so vulnerable. It's very difficult for them to be encouraged to prepare themselves, right? So preparedness will only establish once you sensitize the population. Parallelly, you were having developmental activities. It's equally important. You cannot compromise on your developmental initiatives, which was also contributing to environmental degradation of some sort. Of course, that's the kind of practices that you take. Your hills are becoming fragile. Your plains are getting fragile. So again, these are the gaps where you need to imbibe better structural components to be integrated. That's how we are trying to advocate and bridge the gap between disaster management, or I would say disaster mitigation initiatives, and development. So that's the build back better concept with which we need to have that inclusive approach, right? Of course, relief is always inadequate because in terms of resources, in terms of whatever you are providing is less as compared to the humongous requirements that come from hugely populated nation that we are, right? So these were some of the gaps identified. Most of you are aware very basics of how disasters impact, and parallelly for researchers, for people who are now venturing into better mitigation and preparedness aspects, it is important to note that you have multiple kind of natural and human induced hazards, and then the subsequent disasters that follow or they convert into major contributors being the hydromet met origin hazards and disasters, which means the impact on not just communities, on the social structures and also on infrastructures is going to be more in the coming times, from maybe erratic rainfalls, incessant intense rainfalls leading to flooding situations. Like I had mentioned, your cyclonic activities both in the east and west coast is increasing. Both the coasts are becoming more prone to severe intense cyclonic activities. Your north and northeastern states as a country are prone to heavy wind speeds. The neighboring riparian countries that we have, they also have similar concerns. Bangladesh has always been praised for their evolvement in terms of how they have managed cyclones over the years. Again, Bangladesh is a thickly populated country, so there's a lot of learnings in terms of how they have worked on their safe shelter construction practices. Hailstorms, cloudbursts, definitely you'll have the urban areas are going to have more prolonged heat duration times, so which means dealing with heat wave as a concern in terms of health impact, and also in terms of the kind of constructions that we are going to encourage so that we get some solace from heat waves is an area that needs to be worked on, right? So from a land use planning perspective, from architectural perspective, from engineering perspective, there needs to be more involvement in terms of the kind of green zones being made or green constructions to be practiced more. You will definitely have impacts from snow avalanches. Avdesh had mentioned one slide on GLOF, so how GLOF is going to impact. Similarly, you also have landslide induced certain lake outburst phenomena that also cause a lot of issues. Thunder and lightning as concerns is also increasing for India. And definitely similar concerns for our neighboring countries also. So this is just why we need to, which are the areas that we need to focus more when it comes to taking care, building back better in terms of preparing for natural and human induced hazards and disasters. And needless to say, again, you have climate fragility is going to pose a lot of concerns, not just trans-state, but trans-boundary concerns in terms of how floods are impacting, how there are going to be more stress on human beings and other life forms, how natural calamities are going to impact the ecosystems, variabilities in your cropping patterns, your coastlines are shrinking. There is going to if you look at the Indian coastline also, you have these variations you can see over the years, which is attributed to the sea level rise. You have glacier melting as one of the concerns. And then there's going to be a big concern of refugees, because a lot of places where you will have, habitation areas won't be available. So definitely that will leave people with no opportunity but to migrate to different zones. And then there's going to be more stress on coastal areas, and B, on the riverbanks. So a lot of people are going to migrate to such zones, which is again going to impact them, right? So in terms of both human vulnerability wise, and also in terms of the kind of construction practices they are going to take up. So that kind of makes it why we are harping upon building infrastructure resilience. One example in this context is again from Uttarakhand 2013, where once when they went back for a better constructions after the 2013 destruction, there was a policy intervention by the state government and the humanitarian services partners who were working on the new constructions. Now, if a lot of you can recollect and revisit the memories of pictures of how the river was flooding and how around the Kedarnath the shops were falling flat, how across the river zones the constructions were falling flat from the Uttarakhand times. So that automatically gives you an insight into the wrong construction practices, or not drawing your constructions based on proper land use planning, right? This is also why we now have river regulation zones coming up very strongly. Likewise, how we also have the coastal regulation zones. If a lot of you are aware, the coasts have been divided into categories depending upon their sensitivity and fragility. So you have Andamans and Nicobars as specific separate category, and then there are CRZ 2, 3, 4, which allows developmental activities to certain extent and certain possibilities only, based on the kind of vulnerabilities and fragilities they have, right? On the same lines, because a lot of people reside in the river banks and zones, you have the river regulation zones also coming up, where there would be certain activities permitted and certain in terms of even dwellings. So I was talking about the example of Uttarakhand 2013. So the government policy was that the new construction, the monetary assistance provided for the new construction to the localites would not be given in one go. It would be in parts. And it was only on the condition that the new construction, the new houses that would be constructed would be on safe identified zones and not the original, danger zones. And once the base was formed, Hindi mein hum kehte hain jab aapne ghar ki neev dal di. So once the base was done, then the second funding installments were to be dispersed. After, the teams would visit the new sites and ensure that the locals have created their new houses in safe zones. So that's how they tried to work on, how this would work for people. So these are the kind of localized examples that need to be encouraged across a lot of zones for better construction practices to be made integral, which is lacking. A lot of people don't invest in better or safe construction practices. So this is the background with which the thought was that let us now focus on initiatives on risk reduction rather than risk management. So moving from, that is why we also say that you have moved from Hyogo to Sendai. So Hyogo and Sendai are both places in Japan where in 2005, India is a signatory to both the frameworks. And in 2005, the idea of setting the Hyogo framework was to have better managerial capacities, enhance your disaster management capacities. But if you look at the same year, 2005, we had the establishment of the Disaster Management Act. Now, the act was established with the thought that you need to have a difference in your vision and you need to invest more perhaps in preparedness, prevention, and mitigation rather than on management aspect, right? But it was the efforts were contrary to how the Hyogo framework worked. So Hyogo was for 10 years duration, 2005 to 15. Now again in 2015, when the countries met, again India was a part to it, about 186 countries, they realized that your efforts were mostly concentrated for relief, and which means we were not investing in safer construction practices, or we were not investing in risk reduction measures, right? So it was again why there was a need felt for revamping the whole Hyogo framework, and there was the establishment of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. The idea was to minimize any kind of loss due to disasters, try and avoid hazards or prevent hazards as much as possible, and prepare from these hazards. Now, this is the idea with which the DRR concept was established, and this is the idea with which you had the establishment of the Sendai framework. Parallelly, this is also the time when the Millennium Development Goals were revamped, because the Millennium MDG goals were focusing more on only hunger management or zero poverty. They were centered around poverty reduction, basically, from a human development perspective. So they were revamped again to the duration of SDGs is again 2015 to 2030, which means our efforts, countries who are a party to taking care of these SDGs, again, the efforts are between 2015 to 2030. So it's in line with what the Sendai framework also speaks. Now, what is happening is, because SDGs focus a lot on human development parameters and perspective, and Sendai framework talks purely in terms of investing in risk reduction practices. What is required is a inclusive approach for both these measures. Now, if you look at the Sendai framework, definitely it talks about minimizing life loss, for which as a country India has definitely done much better, but safeguarding livelihoods and also health is one of the concerns. But SFDRR or Sendai framework emphasizes rather more on two areas specifically, or two sectors specifically, which is health and education. And also it kind of reinforces our efforts to be built around managing critical infrastructure, and the emphasis is like on health and education sector more. This is also why the CDRI has come into existence, about which Avdesh has detailed you out. So that's why there is this establishment of the CDRI center, where the efforts are now to safeguard your property, invest more in building your infrastructure more resilient. You have the the smart city concepts, but if you look at the smart city concepts, there's very less of integration of mitigation activities or risk reduction activities. So the need is to integrate these in your smart city concepts also. So that's for the Sendai framework part. And of course, you have the different targets. Of course, it comes in hand with it. So if you are going to safeguard your infrastructure, definitely you're going to reduce the mortality and number of people who will be impacted, right? It calls in for, again, advancement in terms of having multi-hazard early warning systems and making risk information and assessments a prerequisite to a lot of your efforts. You also have the Building Material and Technology Promotion Council of India that talks about the vulnerability of our country to some of the basic natural hazards from basically construction perspective. So even their parameters are what kind of roads India, Indian zones have, what kind of constructions the houses have. Are they kacha houses? Are they pakka? How much of brick? How much of cement? How much of concrete? What kind of technologies have been used? So it's based on these construction parameters that you have some of the vulnerability assessments done. Although if you will have an inclusion of the social vulnerability to it, definitely these statistics might change, but that's just a separate part. I am aware that Indian Institute of Guwahati, one of their departments, is working on making a similar parameters based on the social segregation, a vulnerability index for the country. So they're also working. Now, I was referring to also the SDGs. From the perspective of infrastructure resilient buildings, you have two very specific SDG goals that talks about, or that kind of advocates and are on the need for better safeguarding, which is goal number 9, that talks about this better your manufacturing practices, basically resilient infrastructure building. Also it advocates to encourage people to have new innovations put in place, right? So you can see a lot of statistics here, which is I think given from the pandemic perspective, how prior to pandemic the situation was in terms of our infrastructure, and how the pandemic, the 2 years or 1.5 years duration has pushed it again back, right? Like for the developmental countries, they say that a lot of small scale industries, their access to some kind of funding systems is only 35% of such people have that access, and likewise. So that's goal number 9, and the second goal is goal number 11, to make cities and human settlements more resilient. So these are the two areas, two sustainable goals that talks in terms of such the smart city concepts with which we are also working. That project is also going on, but these are also the two goals where you have ample opportunities and scope to integrate our disaster risk reduction initiatives, especially from the mitigation perspective. That is the structural mitigation perspective for building resilient infrastructure, right? Now, I would stop. You have a lot of other goals which have linkages. Goal number 13, because it talks about climate variations. So definitely they will have impact on, like I had mentioned, urban areas would have a different impact. The rural settings would have different impact. So you have definitely a whole lot of other goals that are interconnected. Almost all the goals are actually intricately interconnected, but nonetheless, there are 1 or 2 of these goals which are very specific to the current, training program that we have just mentioned. So to end here, just for the information of the group, the NITI Aayog has now revamped the financial support in the field of disaster management. So they have renamed it as National Disaster Risk Management and State Disaster Risk Management Fundings, where you can see the breakup. And there is a 20% dedicated funding allotted for mitigation, taking up mitigation activities. Now, what I am trying to just bring to you all is that if you are working in different sectors that talks about achieving the sustainable development goals, why not integrate some of the better mitigation practices into it? You can design your projects centered around better mitigation, and maybe also include some sort of training and capacity building initiatives into it. Of one program that the states are taking up a lot of programs, specific programs, not going directly into that, but one of the projects that was run by the center was for the masons training. I am aware that a lot of states have their authorities, the disaster management authorities, have taken up a lot of similar now initiatives, where they train the mistris and a lot of people who play a role in construction, in the construction practices, and they tell them about what kind of safe engineering practices can be integrated for landslide-proof construction, or for earthquake-proof construction, or even for that matter, the better flood construction practices that go way back in 2005. After the tsunami of 2004, the new constructions across some of the districts in Tamil Nadu are actually earthquake and flood-proof constructions, the new houses, the new dwellings that are given to the local communities. So the idea is that a lot of training, capacity building fundings and a lot of these mitigation funds can be diverted to fulfillment of some of these SDGs, along with building safer construction practices. So I think I'll just stop here. It was just to give you an overview, and if there are any queries, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Avdesh, and thank you, Michael.
Thank you, ma'am, for your knowledgeful session. And especially today, I would like to give you credit that you raised one very important thing, that the thing you was talking about, the Mason training at a state. So yes, it is exist, and one of our speaker is also the part of that training. So where the state government trained the.
That will be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. So this is something that is associated with the civil engineering, and I belong from the civil engineering background. So thank you for raising and letting the people to, so that they can also aware that these type of initiatives are taken by the government. And during your session, you very wonderfully explained that how the people have the disbelief that no scientific hazard risk vulnerability and mapping. That's why people have the doubt on this warning, because many times this warning got failed. So inadequate early warning system, absence of techno-legal regime, and safe building, environmental degradation, like issues you have raised, that needs to be in the near future for the betterment of the disaster risk reduction in the country, and in nationally and globally. So you also explain about the classification of disaster identified by the high-powered committee, and you talk about the Build Back program also, and you give the wonderful sight of the how the India is exposed to these disasters in a high level. So risk to the like it's a risk to the ecosystem and to the people of India. And also in the further you explain about the paradigm shift from preparedness mitigation to the from relief centric to the preparedness mitigation to, and HIGO framework and its 17th sustainable development goal, especially 9 and 11 point. And at last, you discuss about the 15th Finance Commission, Article 280, 1.4, 2020 onwards, and that I mentioned in the beginning, that Mason's training, that for the safe engineering practice, so that they can be promoted in the society. This was a very wonderful lecture, ma'am, and thank you so much for these wonderful inputs at this platform. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Avdesh. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. And now we are proceeding towards the sum up of this day one. And Michael, sir, are you connected? Have you connected?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I think we should proceed towards the end of the day one.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
before ending the day one, I would like to briefly read the discussion that held today. So in the session of day one's inaugural session began with wonderful presence of Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir address, who says that nothing happened without probability, and anything that is happened was probable. So he rightly mentioned that it is not possible that 100% we say that a disaster or calamity can be stopped, but at most level, whatever we can do with our end, so we should go for the risk reduction to that level. So after that, Professor Anil Kumar Gupta sir's context setting address, inaugural address. So he discussed he insightfully discussed that IPCC 6 assessment reports point that recently come in the global community, and lots of discussions are going on right now on this. So how loss of, he said that how loss of life is reducing, but the effect on the people or the effect of disaster on the area is increasing. So here we should go for the disaster resilient infrastructure. We have enough points, and the infrastructure resilience should not be based on the current time needs and assessment only. It should be the futuristic, involving the futuristic, involving the visions of the future, and that include the needs as well of that time. So in my address, I also raise a very specific point of disaster resilient infrastructure, that is the disaster resilient infrastructure in context of we can say this World Heritage Site, or you can say architectural point of view, how these sites are important, why we need to conserve that. They are the identity of any nations, and lots of emotions are embedded of the people with these structures, and they carry the stories over a past to the future generation. They are like the books without pages. So I raised these issues and we discussed comprehensively what type of different guidelines are there in the country, like NDMA's guideline. I discussed that, and how we can achieve the disaster resilience in this architecture and the heritage structure domain. After that, we got the chance to opportunity to hear recently Dr. Sushma Guleria ma'am, who comprehensively discuss the framework for disaster management and risk and put forward that how disasters can be identified and its classification by the high-powered committee. And she comprehensively discussed the points related to the related to the paradigm shift, need of the paradigm shift of the society. कि बाद में बहुत सारा पैसा लगाने से अच्छा है कि पहले से ही प्रिपेयर्डनेस पे लगा लिया जाए। ये सबसे अच्छा एक मंत्र है एक आपदा प्रबंधन के आपदा न्यूनीकरण की दिशा में। तो ये बहुत ही एक अच्छा एक इनिशिएटिव है जिस पर वैश्विक कम्युनिटी इस वक्त कार्य कर रही है और भारत भी इसमें साथ है, लेकिन अभी भी बहुत सारा काम किए जाने की जरूरत है। और मैम ने अभी 15th फाइनेंस कमीशन में इंक्लूडेड प्रोविजंस को भी सामने रखा एंड शी डिस्कस अबाउट द हाउ द एक्सपोजर ऑफ इंडिया एंड स्पेशली द risk to the ecosystem and people of India. So this was a great discussion of day one proceeded with. So now I would like to end this discussion here, and I would like to thank all our dignitaries and all the participants and all our learned speakers who presented here, who participated in this 3-day FDP training programs on disaster resilient infrastructure and way forward day one. And I would like to inform them all that for the certification purpose must register on training.nidm.org, whose link is available in the chat box. Please register yourself there. And I would like to thank especially Amitabh Drone sir. I can still see sir. He's present. He is still connected there.
I would
Thank
like
you,
to say something.
Please, sir. Please.
Yeah, it is like, as a layman, I would like to say something to your esteemed academicians and the researchers. Like, until disaster strikes, we do not tend to take disaster management seriously. But then
Right,
it is
sir.
too late.
Right,
And
sir.
we are not inclined to make our buildings disaster resilient and not inclined to develop disaster resilient infrastructure. This is especially due to the additional cost incurred and also because of lack of awareness, which I have heard already from other speakers. Through
Right,
this
sir.
platform, I would like to request your esteemed academicians and researchers to develop affordable materials and methods to make new as well as old existing structures disaster resilient, and request you to advise the government, because the government will listen to your opinions because you are all experts. I would like you to advise the government to spread more awareness in the public and to make viable changes in construction bylaws which can be enforced by the government building authorities. So this is my opinion, and this I would like to say humbly, that you all should develop new methods and cheaper options so that we can make our buildings and infrastructure more resilient to disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. These are very valuable suggestions, and we have the experts from NIDM, and we all have the academician not only from India and the practitioner not only from India but world as well, like from Philippines and Nepal, Bangladesh, etc. So this is a very good submission, or we can say the idea that you have provided, suggestion you have provided here. So rightly, if any technology is expensive, it is not going to popularize in the world. So thank you so much, sir, for suggestion. And I can see Nakul Tarun sir is also connected with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence. Nakul sir, can you hear us? I think he is not able to. So before going to the end, let's see one short video on this, so that all can interactively understand why disaster resilient infrastructure is the need of the hour. I'm playing this video. Please see this video. Popularized in the world. So thank you so much, sir, for suggestion. And
recent natural
I can
disasters
see
have
Nakul
exposed.
Sir is also kindly confirm if it is visible. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yes,
Nakul sir, can you hear us?
A critical problem. America's disasters have exposed a critical problem with America's existing infrastructure.
So before
Our
going to the
roads,
end,
buildings, and
let's
highways
see,
haven't been built to be
one
resilient
short
to the
video
natural
on this,
disasters that
so
we are
that
likely to
all
face this
can
century.
interactively
It's not just
understand
existing infrastructure
why
that needs help.
disaster resilient
New
infrastructure
infrastructure
is
should
the
be
need
built
of
to
the
be
hour.
resilient to future
I'm
catastrophes
playing
as
this
well.
video. Please
Too often, the
see this
hazards
video.
that we experienced in the past guide how new infrastructure is built. But it's critical to consider new and potential threats that could arise in the future. Failing to plan for future risks could lead to costly repairs or catastrophic failures and may reduce the infrastructure's expected lifespan. And when existing roads and bridges are damaged, destroyed, or replaced, they shouldn't be built back to how they were. Instead,
thank you
they
so
should be
much, sir,
built
for
back
suggestion.
better than they were.
And,
Recent natural
I can
disasters
see
have expensive,
Michael sir is
but
also
every
kindly
dollar we
confirm
invest
if
on
it is
improving
visible.
disaster resilience
Thank
today
you, sir. Thank
saves
you
us
for your
from
presence.
spending $6
Yes,
in the
sir.
future.
Yes,
That doesn't
Can
mean
you hear us?
replacing everything overnight, but it does mean embracing a resiliency mindset with America's new roads, bridges, or buildings. Our roads, buildings, and highways haven't been built to be resilient to the natural disasters that we are likely to face this century. It's not just existing infrastructure.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Michael sir. Okay, so this was the interactive way where animation showed how disaster resilient infrastructure is provided as sustainable. You can say the rigid or firm infrastructure to the society that is able to stand before the disasters. So that's why we should go for that. And I can still see Nakul Tarun sir, if you can hear us. Nakul sir, can you hear us? Sir, first of all, very warm welcome here.
Yes,
And thank you for connecting with this August gathering. So Nakul Tarun sir is a very senior disaster management expert who is practicing all these things what we are discussing today. So, sir, this is a program on disaster resilient infrastructure. So I would like to say a few, request you to say a few words about this topic and domain. Please, sir.
देखिए सॉरी मैं बीच में अवधेश ने मुझे लैंड करा दिया है आप लोगों के बीच में, तो अब आप लोग मुझे सुने, इन्होंने मुझे फ्यू वर्ड बोला है तो मैं फ्यू वर्ड ही बोलूंगा.
There's actually this is the concluding one, sir.
तो मैं आप लोगों से ये कहना चाहता हूँ, देखिए जो नया इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर अगर आप लाते हैं तो ऑब्वियसली आपको जो कोड्स हैं, जो रूल रेगुलेशन है, उसे आपको फॉलो करना चाहिए. नहीं करेंगे तो डिसास्टर आएगा, जो अभी तक आप लोग बात कर रहे हैं. लेकिन क्या करें, पुराने जो स्ट्रक्चर्स खड़े हैं, पुराने स्कूल हैं, पुराने कॉलेज हैं, पुराने हॉस्पिटल हैं. हॉस्पिटल्स हमें तब चाहिए जब हम बुरे वक्त में होते हैं. और क्या हो उस हॉस्पिटल का, अगर मान लीजिए कि अर्थक्वेक आया, उस समय मुझे हॉस्पिटल जाना है और पता चला अब हॉस्पिटल ही नहीं है, तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि हम लोगों को जो लाइफ लाइन बिल्डिंग्स हैं, जो क्रिटिकल बिल्डिंग्स हैं, उन्हें तो पहले प्रायोरिटी पे रेजिलिएंट बनाना है. कि देखिए 100% रेजिलियंसी एक कंसेप्ट है, वो कभी नहीं हो सकता. क्या हो सकता है, लेवल्स हो सकते हैं. जैसे हम लोग कहते हैं कि दिल्ली का मेट्रो जो है वो रिक्टर स्केल पे अगर 8 तक अर्थक्वेक आ जाए तो वो नहीं गिरेगा, मतलब इतना वो रेजिलिएंट है, ऐसा उसको बनाया गया है। दूसरा एग्जाम्पल साधारण भाषा में समझने के लिए, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है इसमें काफी यूनिवर्सिटी के स्टूडेंट हैं, फ्लड लेवल के ऊपर हम स्कूल बनाएं, जो फ्लड लेवल है उसके ऊपर हम लोग स्कूल बनाएं कि ताकि जो बाढ़ आए तो वो डूबे नहीं। तो क्या किया, 100% रेजिलियंसी नहीं है, फ्लड जो है वो फ्लड लेवल के ऊपर भी आ सकता है ना, लेकिन वो क्या है, ऑलरेडी क्रिटिकल एक लेवल लगा हुआ है। तो ऐसे ही हमें अपने जो लाइफ सेविंग लाइफ लाइन बिल्डिंग्स हैं उनको रेजिलियंसी देना पड़ेगा, जितना जल्दी करें उतना अच्छा है। क्या कर सकते हैं, हम लोगों को हर स्कूल का, हर कॉलेज का, हर हॉस्पिटल का, हर सिनेमा हॉल का, अपनी सोसाइटी का डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान एक क्वालिफाइड डिसास्टर मैनेजर से बनवाकर उसे लागू करना चाहिए। जैसे ही ये बनता है, ये एक प्रोसेस है, ये केवल कागज पे बना हुआ एक प्लान नहीं होता है, ये एक ऐसा प्लान है जिसे आपको लागू करना है। जैसे ही आप उसे ट्रांसलेट करते हैं, इंप्लीमेंट करते हैं, वैसे ही मोर देन 50% डिसास्टर रिस्क रिडक्शन हो जाता है।
अरे नहीं, अरे सुनो तो सफरी पर
मेरे ख्याल से पीछे काफी लोग शोर कर रहे हैं, तो उनको थोड़ा शांत करना पड़ेगा। तो मैं आप सब लोगों से यही कहूंगा कि जहां भी है, कोई होटल में जाते हैं आप, आस्क देम कि जी आपका डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बना है क्या। किसी स्कूल में अपने बच्चे का एडमिशन करवाते हैं, आस्क देम जी आपका डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बना है क्या। ये आपका राइट है, आपका राइट टू लिव जो है, जिंदगी का जो अधिकार है, वो उसी को एक्सटेंड करके कि हमें सुरक्षा के साथ जीना है। तो रेजिलियंसी यहीं से स्टार्ट होगा, पहले आपको जागना है, फिर बाकी लोग जागेंगे। तो क्योंकि मेरा आज शेड्यूल नहीं है, बाकी आप मैं तो देखने आया था कि अवधेश जी बहुत बढ़िया काम कर रहे हैं, इसलिए मैं आया था। तो उन्होंने, वो अच्छा मैनेजर है, उन्होंने मुझे भी लगा दिया काम में। तो ठीक है, मेरे तरफ से इतना ही। ठीक है अवधेश जी।
जी सर, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और जैसे कि आप इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन को काफी अच्छे से संभालते भी हैं, तो मुझे ये सब थोड़ा संकोच भी नहीं होता है। मुझे पता है कि आप हैं, तो बहुत सारी चीजों को मैनेज करना उतना मुश्किल नहीं है। और आज हमारे जितने भी प्रोग्राम्स में हुआ, तो ये बातें भी जितना डिस्कशन हो सामने आए, बहुत अच्छा रहता है, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली समाज का हित ही इनसे जुड़ा हुआ है। इस तरीके के डिस्कशन में ये बातें सामने जब आती हैं तो सबको तक पहुंचती हैं। एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर all the participants, and we are skipping the question. We will move this questionnaire session in our day 2. We have the day 2 as well, but there is information that day 2 session will be started 10:15 a.m. tomorrow. So it will not be 10:30. So I will request all the participants to please join at 10:15 tomorrow. So day 2. So we have the scheduled lecture of Professor, very senior Professor Chandan Ghosh sir, who is head of Department of Resilient Infrastructure Division, NIDM, and he is going to talk on urban infrastructure resilience. Second talk will be delivered by Mr. Ankit Kumar ji from Department of Assistant Professor from Department of Civil Engineering, INVERTIS University, my colleague. He will deliver on green buildings for climate change risk reduction. And third will be delivered by Ms. Shruti Bansal, Research Fellow and Associate from NIDM. So she will deliver on climate resilience in industries. So these are the 3 lecture schedules today, and I would like to thank to all the participants and our speakers and dignitaries for today. Thank you so much. It's the time to end this show day 1, and we will meet tomorrow at day 2 at 10:15 a.m. Thank you so much. Michael sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Dr. Kumar Ganeshan, thank you. Ravindra Reddy ji, thank you. I can see lots of people.
Thank you, sir.
Connected with this. Thank you, Manish. आज नेपाल का तुम्हारा काफी comprehensive discussion हुआ. You can leave the session, please. Platform remain open for a while, but you can leave the session. Thank you.